Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every single one of us: death. But in a way you might not expect. I'm very thrilled to be joined by Genevie Keeney-Vasquez, the president of the National Museum of Funeral History down in Houston, Texas. Genevieve has spent years exploring how humanity has faced mortality across time and cultures, and the museum is a treasure trove of stories, artifacts, and insights really about how we say goodbye. And what better day to talk about this than on Ash Wednesday? Good morning and welcome to the show, Genevieve.
Good morning. How are you guys doing today?
Doing so far so good. I know it's very early in the morning, so thank you so much for joining us. But I have a quick question. So obviously, death is a part of life. We all share, yet it's something many of us avoid from thinking about. So from your perspective, maybe even drawing on your anthropology lens here, why do you think it's so important for us to reflect on death, not just as individuals, but as a society?
Well, I always tell people we begin dying the moment we're born, right? And so death is very much a part of life. But I think we avoid it for several reasons. One is just because of the pain that we all get from the absence of the person that we have come to love and appreciate and know in our life. They enhance our life in some way. And so when they die, then the grief becomes the emotions that I think that we all just really don't want to have to deal with. We don't want to deal with the loss of something or someone that we love. And so I think that we tend to avoid that, which causes us fear and pain. But I think all of it, a lot of times also as people, it's an unknown, right? What happens to us when we die? So many people don't know that answer. And unless you die, you'll never experience it until then, right? And so
Right.
there's a sense of unknowing, and that unknowing creates fear as well. But interesting enough, our society sensationalizes death, right? We use it as a form of entertainment. And it's interesting because we're drawn to watch it, or we're drawn to listen about it. However, we still fear that which is the most inevitable event in life, right? Because, like I said, once you start living, you're bound to die. And so when that does happen, we have rituals and customs that really go back to the beginning of time. And if you think about it, Jesus was buried. He was placed in a tomb. There was somewhat of a ritual, if you will, in preparing his body, wrapping it up, and then putting it someplace safe for all eternity. So that's what we believed. And then the resurrection happened. And so I think that resurrection is what gave people hope that when we die, we go somewhere. Our soul goes somewhere. Our body stays here, but our soul goes somewhere. And so the funeral is an opportunity for people to gather, to recognize the death, to grieve together as a community, as a society, help us move on.
Yeah, it is very interesting how much death is in our entertainment, yet we're still kind of afraid, and we don't want to. We want to avoid that altogether in our own lives. It's very interesting. You did mention on something talking about, well, the most famous burial of all time, the Shroud of Turin. Can you tell us a little of what visitors at the museum can expect from this specific exhibit, and why you think it's such a powerful piece of history to share?
Well, yeah, it is a powerful piece because at first, when I was approached to bring the Shroud of Turin to the museum, my first instinct was that never leaves, the custody of the reigning pope. I was like, how would I get a copy of the Shroud of Turin to my facility? And it was a very long journey of I have to say patience and perseverance and faith in hoping that we would get a copy of this shroud. But but the biggest tie-in is that this shroud is a burial cloth, and it's a burial cloth that they believed was wrapped around a scourged man that we have come to know as Jesus. And the impression that was on this shroud, that of the body, shows all of the wounds. It's a very detailed cloth. And it shows the tradition of having that funeral and having that burial that was witnessed by many. But the actual copy that we have is so significant because we put a request into the Bishop of Turin back in 2018, beginning of 2019, and we were very hopeful of getting a certified copy from them, because you can get a copy, from eBay and stuff like that, but that's not what we want for our museum. And the request, it took years before our request was ever granted. And we were surprised when it was. Come to find out, the piece that we actually have is one of 7 in the entire world that was woven from flaxseed that was taken from the vault of the seeds that were from the time period of the crucifixion of Jesus, and planted in a field of Bergamo while we were all hibernating from COVID. They were planting the seed. And the whole purpose for them doing this is because we did go through a pandemic. There was a lot of people that were, losing their faith, not able to come together and congregate in their faith. And when we're divided, that's when evil can come in, right? And the history of the shroud is it comes out during pandemics, when there's a war, when there's a world calamity. And so what better time than our time to show what this shroud is all about? And so these seeds were planted, and this flaxseed was harvested in August of 2020 while we were all hibernating, and woven on ancient looms to create as close as possible the same herringbone technique as the original shroud. And then the crop yielded 10 copies, but during the modern day laser printing of the image, it destroyed 3 of them, unfortunately. So there was only 7 available. And we were very fortunate to get one of those 7 coveted copies of the shroud. And like I say, it's as close to the original linen that we could possibly get in our current day and age.
Wow, that is so cool. Just looking at the website of the museum, there are so many interesting exhibits on kind of the world's funeral cultures. So real quick, what's like one surprising thing you've learned about how humans have approached death that you think could change the way we view it today?
The way that they, like I said earlier, is we kind of approach death with some hesitation, right? But if you can come to the museum and open up your mind and realize that this is a time-honored tradition, right? It's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And if you can come to the museum and learn about some of the traditions that have gone on for so long, kind of puts death in perspective, that this is part of life. I always hope that when a visitor comes to the museum, that they'll walk away enlightened on the customs of death, but the profession that takes care of the dead, because that's also a time-honored tradition, is the funeral director and the profession in caring for the dead. And a lot of people, unless you know a funeral director in your life, you don't realize the undertaking, if you will, that goes into caring for the dead and how long it's been around. And so it's, if you can come to the museum and walk away saying, wow, I actually learned something that was truly amazing, I've done my job. But more so, if you walk away embracing life better than you did when you went in, realizing it is finite and it is precious, then I've succeeded even more.
So cool. So for those out there that are maybe looking at visiting the museum, what is the one place that they should stop by, aside from the shroud, of course, but and what is your favorite exhibit?
I have to say my favorite out of all of them now, and it keeps changing, of course, is the history of cremation. Because it really that has been a form of disposition that has really become, it supersedes burial as a choice nowadays. Unfortunately, during COVID, a lot of people were cremated, and it was during that cremation process, I think people had to, because they were forced to it, I think that they realized it wasn't as bad as they thought it was going to be. Also, the Catholic faith has now allowed for cremation as a form of disposition, where that wasn't so, and then that's just a recent acceptance. And so I have to say, cremation is my favorite.
Interesting. Yeah. It's just, looking at some of these exhibits, I find it very fascinating, like celebrating the lives and deaths of the popes. What is that? I mean, for those out there, I know we have about 20 seconds left, but man, there's not enough time at all in some of these segments.
It focuses on the true rituals that go into burying a pope that are still happening today. In America, our rituals tend to change with the trends and the requests of the people. However, burying the pope is very traditional, and that's something you can see.
Incredible. Well, I can't thank you enough, Genevie, for joining us this morning. For those listening out there, you can get more information about the museum. Make sure to visit their website. It's nmfh.org. You could probably also Google National Museum of Funeral History and you'll find it. But thank you so much again, Genevie. We appreciate all that you do there. And that is it for today's edition of Morning Joy, where truth matters. Make sure to get those ashes today and wear them proudly, because we will all eventually turn to dust, as Genevie mentioned as well. And, most people push that thought away. So let's remind them. Let's remind the secular world. Let's all help them all. Memento mori, which is Latin for remember your death. Now, if you're listening on the radio and will stay for the Holy Mass, please pray for us. We will continue to pray for you as well. Otherwise, make sure to hop on any of the social media platforms and find us for the after show. But hey, God bless. Make it a joyful day.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.